And everyone that I met, the key difference from other cities that I've traveled to, and I had at the time traveled to a lot of places because of my last consulting firm, was that when you speak to people here, there's a lot of passion and purpose in what they communicate and what they spend their time doing, right? And so like the people on the Hill, they're here because they want to create a change, and everybody's like passionate about something, right? And there's issues that people are working on. The people in the federal government, they're really passionate about their domain space, right? And so it just was very enlightening because I had never heard people talk about their jobs in that way. Like jobs were just jobs. Like like where I grew up in Arizona, like everybody, not everybody, but people don't necessarily like their jobs, and it's just a job. And it may be just a job to certain people, and that's okay because people get their passions fulfilled other ways. But here, it's different, and I wanted to be a part of that.
Welcome to Career Cheat Code. In this podcast, you'll hear how everyday people impact the world through their careers. Learn about their journey, career hacks, and obstacles along the way. Whether you're already having the impact you want or are searching for it, this is the podcast for you. All right, Bacilia, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. So excited to do this.
I'm very excited to have you here today. Our paths have crossed in many different work functions, and you are a remarkable human being, and I would love for the world to learn more about you. So,
thank you. Appreciate you.
Let's dive right in. Let's tell the world what it is you do for a living.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Bacilia Angel, and I right now am the CEO of Meliora Advisors, which is a consulting firm that really helps transform organizations to grow, improve, and help create more people-driven projects and help improve with a people focus in terms of any change that an organization is trying to do, ensuring that they have a human-centered approach to the change that they're trying to create for their organization, for the world, and things like that.
Got it. So what does that mean? So when you walk in on Monday or you turn on your laptop on Monday, what does that mean? What are you actually doing and who are you doing it with?
Yeah, so right now, so I launched a year ago, and right now the day-to-day, every day is very much different. Because I am new, a lot of my day-to-day is making sure people know who I am, really engaging people I've met at some of these events that we've been at together, as well as working with clients. Things like creating a social impact strategy. One of my biggest clients today is Lanusa, and we are working with them on creating a social impact strategy and building really a Latino outreach megaphone to be able to leverage a lot of the access they have in terms of entertainment and media, and being able to connect them with civic organizations to make what they're doing and amplify it on a broad scale for Latinos.
That sounds cool. Is this what you always wanted to do for a living?
No, it's like, no. I mean, based on where I grew up, I definitely know. I would have never even dreamt this was all possible, even where I'm at today. But yeah, it's just definitely not. I would never dream of this, but I do feel like I am pursuing my dreams and feel like I'm on track to do what I really want to do, which is really help the world improve and make things better for people, specifically people of color and underserved populations.
So where did you grow up? Where were you born? All the things.
I was born in California, but I was raised in Arizona in a small town where there's more cows than people. And the claim to fame for Stanfield, Arizona was John Wayne used to own a bunch of land out there. He wanted to be a cowboy. Really in the middle of nowhere, I grew up. There was cornfields. Sometimes it would be cotton fields. They would alternate. And sometimes we did live in the town for like a little bit as well. I think the school had 700 kids and it was K through 8. And it's just very rural to get to the town where now it's a city. My high school was 40 minutes away, or 1 to 2 hour bus ride.
Wow. So you grew up in rural Arizona and you had to take a 40-minute bus ride to get to school. And this was a norm. Like this was normal where you were from. Yeah.
So it was 1 to 2 hours the bus ride. It's 40 minutes if my mom drove me, they would not. If I missed the bus, I was staying home. And so I did not have perfect attendance. It was definitely the norm. And that was for high school. The school in town was maybe 20 minutes away, but it was small. I was very sheltered, but it was very much a different upbringing than a lot of the people I run into at these events, as well as being here in the DC area, growing up, surrounded by immigrants. And I talk about like growing up with like goats and cows and ostriches and selling burritos, which is not the norm for a lot of people I know.
Got it. Okay, so talk to me. So you're in high school. At that point in your life, what is going on? Are you thinking that you're going to be doing this type of job? What does your mind look like at like 16-ish?
So around 16, let's see, I was definitely in high school. At that time, it was really hard. I remember, as I mentioned, burritos, right? So growing up, there was a moment in our life where things changed for us, where then we started selling burritos out in the fields to farm workers. And we were doing that. And so for me, it was, I'd wake up before school. I'd have to make sandwiches, help my mom with whatever she needed before I left. And then coming home from school, I'd have to make 60 bean and cheese burritos.
Wow.
And, that was my life probably that year. And then even the summer when I was 15, 16, we were out going to, so during the summers and sometimes during the year, we'd be waking up 6, 7 in the morning. I'd help again do that. The sandwiches, it would go up to like 100. I would make like 100 sandwiches before I'd go out. And we'd be going out to like 104. It would be, so it's in Arizona. It gets up to 120 and we would be out degrees Fahrenheit. And it was not fun. I remember I'd want to quit every single day and I'd have to negotiate with my mom on so many levels, but it was really hard. It was for multiple reasons. It was not, one, I'm not a morning person. And then I learned to not like cooking as much because of having to be surrounded by all this cooking. And then it was hot and again, we were sheltered. So I would see a lot of kids, a lot of friends, they'd be having fun, whereas I would have to be working. And so it was just not as cool, but I learned a lot from my mom, and seeing that whole experience was very interesting to me. So for me, it like motivated me to do good in school. All to come back to your question, which is
so first of all, that is a fascinating upbringing. So you and your mom, it's hard to quit, right? When your boss is your mom. So like
there was no quitting, mom.
Yeah. So you were waking up, you were selling burritos, kind of the entrepreneurship of your mom to kind of make ends meet and make it all happen and pull it all together within the household, boss vibes. And, pulling in the resources that she had at the time, which was you, to say, all right, let's make this work. Tell me about how that shaped your outlook on what your career prospects could be, right? Because you can see that and say, you know what I want to do? I want to start my own food truck. I want to start my own restaurant. Like I want to do XYZ, or it could push you in another direction. And I just would love to explore that.
Yeah. So at that point, I really just wanted to get away from all of that. And I was like, in my head, I was like, there just has to be a better way. And thankfully, one of my math teachers, I was really good at school and I was really good at math. And one of my math my teacher at the time, recommended a program called the Joaquin Bustos Math Science Honors Program, JBMSHP, who focuses on rural communities, underserved populations, and getting them to learn more about math and science. And he recommended me for this program, helped me apply. I applied for the program and got accepted. And at that program, which is one of the summers in high school, so sophomore, they were the ones that really exposed, when I got exposed to college, which was not something I really fully understood what that meant. And then second, I was exposed to careers that I did not know existed that you could do with math. And I was like, if I could have a job where I could did math all day, I would love it. And I learned about engineering. And so I was determined after that math science honors program to become an engineer. And so that's really still not getting to the CEO part, but I loved the whole concept of using math in a career at that point.
Wow. Okay. So, that's fascinating to me because I think a lot of us don't really have a good sense of what we want to do until later in life. So you're exposed to this program. Do you remember the name of the program? What was it?
Joaquin Bustos.
Joaquin Bustos. Joaquin Bustos. Okay. So you're in this program and you are exposed to this and you're like, you know what? I'm really good at this. I can do this for a living. I want to be an engineer. What happens when you go back to school now?
So I'm determined to get back to college because it was a program where they pretty much take you and for 6 weeks and you get to be a college student for 6 weeks and get the full on experience of living in the dorms. Like we would go bowling. I mean, this was like for 6 weeks, I was taken out of the desert. Yeah. And so for me, I was like, this is the way I have to go to college. So I went back to high school. I was determined to graduate faster. So I talked to my counselor and came up with a plan to graduate from high school early. And so I finished high school in 3 years, applied to ASU, and I didn't even apply anywhere else, which my sister's still like, you should have applied to Harvard, because they all believe I could have gotten in. And I just loved that program so much that I was like determined I'm going to go back to ASU. That's my school. And that's what I wanted. And so I did. I graduated 3 years and got accepted with President's Scholarship.
For context, first of all, congratulations. That's huge. Second of all, how far is Arizona State University from your home?
It's like an hour. I would say an hour.
Okay. So it's an hour away, but that was the most independence I'm sure you felt at that point. And you were like, I can't wait to do this more often. There's no way I'm going to stick out in school for 4 more years. So how did you accomplish graduating early? And at that time, in your mind, we were like, I'm going to apply to ASU. I'm going to get into ASU, which you did. And did you declare as an engineer major, math major? How did that turn out?
Yeah. So I went in as a electrical engineer, and I was determined to be an engineer, but then learned I'm not a big fan of electrical engineering. I took my circuits class. The thing about engineering, you go in and it's not like other degrees where you can take all these electives and fun classes. You go into engineering, you're going 4 years and you start with engineering classes right off the bat. So engineering 100, where we did robots, and that was fun. So that class was fine. So then I was like, okay, engineering is still good. It's the electrical part that's not good. I ended up switching and trying to test out different ones for like the first year and a half, and it just wasn't working out. I was really struggling with certain courses, and I realized I really wasn't prepared to be in college. Studying is different. Tests are different. The way the expectations of you are different. And I don't know if I had been lucky or just really good at the way that my high school and my small town was at preparing me. I did a lot of independent studying growing up, but it was still could not pass some classes. So I really struggled. And I ended up dropping out for about a year.
So you graduated high school early to then go into college and drop out for a while.
Yep. I know. And it was really hard. I didn't intend to, but there was just, there was just a moment where I was overwhelmed with everything that I had going on. At the time, I was also helping my dad start a landscaping company, so I was focused on that. I also just had a lot of personal things, medical reasons that I was really struggling with at the time, and I couldn't continue, which a lot of people might actually be surprised by this because not a lot of people know. I'm not even sure my family knows about this. It was just a really, really hard time, and I needed to step away to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. I was just overwhelmed, felt like I don't know if I was really cut out to be an engineer. I didn't feel like I fit in. I was like one of the few Latinos at ASU that was studying engineering. I was also like, there was these classes with 300 plus students, and they were all men, and I was like one of 5 girls, if even. And it was I just needed to figure out what I needed to do before I continued. So I really struggled for a moment or
That's
two.
fair. So, and I appreciate you sharing that, right? Because, I think folks listening to this may be surprised by it. And I think folks that have just seen your progression can look at you and it's easy to see the greatness, right? And it's like, oh, I'm really good at this thing. And I'm now doing this at a high level. But there were points in time when things didn't go as planned, right? Like you graduate high school early thinking that that will mean you graduate from college early. And instead, you needed a break, and that's okay. And life is not as linear as we sometimes like to make it out to be, right? Like when you look at social media or you look at our LinkedIn's, it all seems progressively getting better, and that's not always the case. There are things that are happening in our lives that force us to stop, force us to prioritize other things, and you did that, and you were able to continuously figure out how to progress from there. So we'd love to hear about kind of what happens once you take a year off. Like, first of all, what are you doing during that year? And then second of all, at what point do you determine to go back?
I was focused on getting healthy. That was my first focus. And then I was setting up my dad for success in terms of the landscaping company. I was doing a lot of the marketing, financials, bookkeeping, just all the back office type stuff, as well as answering phones, help supporting with quotes, so many things, helping it grow. And then at the same time, that really inspired me to do small business. So then I also started a mist system company. So I did a lot of random things. Like my list of experiences is very long. So it's like starting a landscaping company, starting a mist system company. I was also helping because then I learned how to do books. So I was supporting multiple organizations doing bookkeeping. I was doing tax preparation for a minute. And so I really just started exploring, and I was exploring in different small business ventures. But I came back, and because of all that business stuff, I was like, I need to get my business degree. So, because even though I'm like doing business, I would like to have more education around business and finish my degree, even if it's not engineering. So then I did. I went back and I got my business degree. Around that time, economy hit, and it was really rough to get a job during that time. And I ended up getting a job at a call center, doing the Spanish call center for US Airways. So every time you call to change your flight or complain about the flight being delayed, and it was in Spanish. So I did that. And that's where I noticed that all the cool jobs that I would have wanted to have, even in the airline industry, were more technical analyst, pricing analyst, doing the routing. And just that seemed way more fun than answering the phone. And so I ended up going back and to go back to engineering. I was like, I have to just figure it out and do it. And I felt like I was more prepared to do that because I feel like, okay, I kind of learned the hard way. So I need to focus and do good.
Okay. Did you have a different focus of engineering versus, electrical?
Yeah. So at that point, so it was actually really good that I went to US Airways and worked at US Airways, because then I learned about industrial engineering, which is the more focused on manufacturing and systems and processes, which was really more up my alley, even though I didn't really necessarily want to work in a manufacturing setting. At the time, I was open to it, but then I learned that you could do industrial engineering in healthcare. And that's what my focus was. I went back and then got one of my professors recommended me to a small consulting firm that was looking for operations analyst interns. And that's where I feel like I got my break. It was fascinating. I mean, still like to this day, I don't know how I got hired because all the questions he was asking me in that interview, I did not know the answers to. He really liked my cover letter about the logic of how I was able to save US Airways money, potentially. Didn't know how much, but potentially. And then he said he could tell that I was going to give it my all, like in terms of hard work. So
that's awesome. And and I know we spoke about this, but I think it says a lot when you can work at a place in a call center, right? And like a US Airways and think about ways to improve their processes and think about ways that this could be run more efficiently. And that just says a lot about your leadership skills and your willingness to not just show up to work, right? Like a lot of us may just show up to work sometimes, but like, how do you make this work for everyone involved, from the employees to the company to the customer at the other end? And for you to recommend things that improve those processes in ways that, from my understanding, are still kind of in play today, right?
It was definitely a thing. So I was in the call center and everybody would call me. Well, we would all get called. This whole Spanish team would get called. And sometimes we would get English callers. And sometimes it was not very pleasant to hear, because we would answer in Spanish because they reached the Spanish line. And then they'd be like, "You're in America, speak English." And it's like, okay, well, sir, you pressed 1 to get here. And so that whole thing, it was just very irritating. And so the recommendation was to switch the line to be anything but 1. We recommended 8. Essentially, we did that recommendation, and yes, they did end up switching it, and they still have it in place. It's now American Airlines, but they still have it in place. And when they did the switch, it was so much better. It avoided a lot of those calls. It freed up the Spanish line more to be available for what they're intended to do.
Yeah. All right. So you're able to highlight this in this new job interview after you graduate with your degree in engineering. And your goal at that point is to, first of all, probably just get a job, I'm assuming, right? Second of all, preferably in the field of engineering somehow.
Yeah. So they were hiring. So this healthcare consulting firm, their selling point is that they hire engineers to solve healthcare problems. And so they pretty much have a model that uses the Toyota production system to improve healthcare systems, whether it be billing or patient flow. And it was just perfect. It was perfect. And so for me anyway, I was just so excited about that. So they gave me the opportunity to come on board as an operations analyst. So I learned how to use SQL coding and doing data analytics, data analysis support before I then started consulting. That's how I got it started.
That makes sense. Is this a Six Sigma process, or is this a separate level?
So the operations analysis consisted of Six Sigma type analysis, but the project, so eventually they liked me and they thought I could be more than an analyst. Instead of being just computer facing, they thought I had the ability to become a project consultant, to be able to communicate with people and create change. And this is where my skill set of being able to create change and improve really started. And they trained me on a lot of Toyota production system and Lean Six Sigma methodology. And so now I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. They were the ones that really ingrained a lot of the principles, good process engineering, to be able to change and transform entire organizations from either one small process to an entire organization, and doing it Kaizen style, which means like within a week, we will come in, do some training, redesign the process, retool some of the software and tools required to be able to change the process, reorganize the team, whatever it takes, even knocking down walls and building desks, which is what we did. It was like a hectic week, but I would go department to department in healthcare systems to improve their processes, and depending on what their performance indicators were, just helping them transform. And we were able to change the game in multiple areas, whether it was, like I said, patient flow. We didn't do that much, but we were focused a lot on the revenue cycle. So like improving chart flow from 7 days to 3 days, and improving net to cash, which was, from $15 million to 20 million. I think the highest we saw was $24 million monthly. So from changing an entire organization from 15 to 24.
Wow. As a Six Sigma black belt, what does that mean for you now? Like, is that like, what does that mean?
So for me, it's when you learn Lean Six Sigma, when you learn those principles, and for those of you that may be listening to this that don't know, Lean Six Sigma is really a methodology of, so Six Sigma is really focused on the variation, right? And so when you say a process is within Six Sigma, that means for every 1 million opportunities that you run this process, only 3.2 defects per opportunity will occur. So it means it's a high quality process. So you're hoping that your airline, every time it's landing, is definitely within Six Sigma. You don't want any defects in the landing. And lean is really removing all non-value added activity or things that a customer is really not willing to pay for. And that means you're making it very efficient. So making your process flow really good, making sure there's no defects that you have to rework or fix anything along the way. And for me, it's just a way of living. And so I was just talking to my friend and talking about the one time I had to cook Thanksgiving dinner here in Virginia. And I was like, I don't know if it tasted good, but it was a really efficient process. Like in terms of, when the turkey went in the oven.
That is not how you judge a successful Thanksgiving. That's hilarious.
That's why we were laughing, because it was like one friend took the time it took her to do the mashed potatoes. She's going to kill me. Like with the mashed potatoes, I had prepared so much stuff, and I was like, okay, turkey needs to go in at this time. And then at, 20 minutes before, I got to open the oven. Then we put in the sweet potatoes. Anyway, it was a whole thing. But yeah, I was proud of my time management skills.
That tracks. Okay. So you're in this role, you're growing from an analyst to then a consultant to then a senior consultant. Talk to me about the increased responsibility, right? From an analyst to then a senior consultant, and then kind of what happens next.
An analyst, you're pretty much just doing, sitting in front of a computer, either getting from the project consultants the analysis you need to conduct using the data available to present what needs to be presented, a business case to really showcase why the change is needed and why it makes financial sense to invest in this change. If it's going to, if it's going to cost you $200,000 to make this change, and it's going to make you down the road anything over than 200, you should really invest, right? But it was millions usually. So it was different. But then when you become a consultant in this company specifically, now you're on the road. Now you're doing assessments by doing process observations, by gathering the data, determining what are the issues that really need to be improved, and then making recommendations to come up with a solution. Whereas now when you move to senior consultant, now you're leading the team that's doing these things. And now you're making sure that the analyst back in the office is creating the data that you need. You have people on site creating the observations and the planning that you need, and just leading a project through a Kaizen and working with management to prepare the entire team for what's about to happen, which Kaizens can be very intense. That's where I learned that people are key for being able to create change.
So tell me about that transition though. So you get to a point where you are, what made you make the move? And then what did you learn kind of in that transitional period?
So from there, I learned a lot. Thankfully, the leadership of that organization really invested in me, because I was used to just being in front of a computer. I was not really ready to be customer facing. I was not a public speaker at that point. And so they invested in me to get public speaking courses, more training on a lot of these topics. I had to go through these awful boot camps where I would have to present topics on Lean Six Sigma, or things like topics like queuing theory, teach queuing theory to master black belts. That was not fun. And then they would be rude intentionally as part of this boot camp to prepare me for any situation that may occur while out on the road and presenting. And so it was a difficult transition, but thankfully I had the support. I feel like without that support, I would have quit. I would have definitely quit. Yeah, I just, the CEO pulled me into her office. I'll never forget. She could tell that I was insecure and felt like probably imposter syndrome, just like who do I think I am, an engineer, like trying to like create all this change and talking all these very technical terms, and she was like, no, you speak technical, you are prepared for doing this. So she gave me this like beautiful pep talk and just really encouraged me to take ownership of like everything that I achieved to get there, and that I belonged there, and that, because it was mostly guys that I was working with at this time. And then she's like, no, you got this. Like, we're going to kick all of their asses. She used interesting language, used interesting quotes that I won't say, but it was honestly, it was a really good talk that really helped me overcome and be able to move forward. And I did that for three years, which is crucial to my success. And so I still use a lot of those principles, as I mentioned today. Everything I learned there is just a way of living.
At some point you decide, you know what, I still want to do this type of work. I want to do consulting work in engineering or like in process improvement generally. Using your engineering background technically. Tell me about the next place you worked and kind of how you were, because you were there for a while too. So would love to hear about how you were able to kind of stick around in a company for a while and progress within the organization.
So my MITRE experience. Yeah, I came to DC. So as I mentioned, I'm in DC, and I came to an immigration march. So I'm a really big advocate over immigration reform. And I came and I fell in love with the city in a sense that one, the monuments and everything is just so grand. And I went to the immigration march and a few other events and ended up meeting these amazing people. And everyone that I met, the key difference from other cities that I've traveled to, and I had at the time traveled to a lot of places because of my last consulting firm, was that when you speak to people here, there's a lot of passion and purpose in what they communicate, and so on what they spend their time doing, right? And so, like the people on the Hill, they're here because they want to create a change, and everybody's like passionate about something, right? And there's issues that people are working on. The people in the federal government, they're really passionate about their domain space, right? And so it just was very enlightening because I had never heard people talk about their jobs in that way. Like jobs were just jobs. Like where I grew up in Arizona, like everybody, not everybody, but people don't necessarily like their jobs, and it's just a job. And it may be just a job to certain people, and that's okay because people get their passions fulfilled other ways. But here, it's different, and I wanted to be a part of that. And so I ended up coming to DC. So when I ended up going through a divorce around that time, and I was like, I'm going to make my wish come true. So at that time, I was married. I didn't see it as a potential possibility. I was like, I would love to live here. And so then when I became free, to make just really focus on myself and what I really wanted to do. And I decided to look for opportunities in other cities and really explore. And thankfully, MITRE flew me during an ice storm, and I didn't even have any other. It was interesting, but they flew me out here, and it was just the perfect fit because I wanted to use my skills for good. And MITRE is a company that really focuses on solving problems for a safer world. And it's their only customer. And I know they do a lot of, they do some other stuff, but their big focus is solving problems for a safer world and helping the federal government in multiple domains. And so I was able to work for MITRE for almost 8 years. My favorite part about working for MITRE was I was able to work on national projects and create change and improve different areas. And I just have so many proud moments of like some of the projects I've gotten to work on, including the NIH All of Us research program, which is improving biomedical diversity like the other one, the COVID convalescent plasma, where we were helping keep the national stockpile for plasma and ensure that underserved populations were aware of this treatment and were participating, and keeping them informed of the latest research with COVID and COVID convalescent plasma. And I mean, there was just others. I got to work on veteran affairs and got to work on that project specifically when they were in the news for delays in getting treatment care in the community. And I was part of the team that redesigned the process to be able to get care in the community.
Wow. No, that's great. And I appreciate you also sharing kind of some of the projects that were near and dear to your heart, right? Because I think for a lot of us, it's trying to get a sense of what being this type of consultant means, right? So tell me about your actual role in that project specifically, in some of that outreach and reaching communities. What were you tasked with doing?
So I came in halfway through the project, but we were forming partnerships with civic engagement organizations, churches, businesses, multiple organizations, as well as working with a digital team. We got to work on media, and at the time I didn't know very much about creative. So my background's very technical, process, numbers. And so one of the things I was fascinated about is I got to see the creative process and how people create things to be able to inspire. For the first time, I was sitting in a meeting and we were looking at a social media post as a discussion topic. And so, and I didn't know that was a thing. I was like, this is a real job for certain people, like on a regular. And I got to be the leader of the team that was doing that stuff. And so I learned a lot. I got an appreciation for what creatives do and how much goes into creating social media campaigns, movements, partnerships. But then I also had to tie some numbers to it. Like, what does this mean to the government? Like, how many partners do we need to reach to be able to get, like, how many people are actually getting the messaging? Like, who's talking about this in social media? We even had like web crawling, which was pretty cool. And then getting the sentiment of what people are saying and doing those type of analysis, which didn't know they existed. And so then I learned a lot about how to do those and what they mean.
Wow. And so at some point during those 8 years-ish, you figured that you needed to go to grad school for some reason. Can you tell me about why you made that decision? And presumably you were working while going to school, right? So how were you able to balance all of that?
So yeah, it's very interesting. So I had a baby in 2019. And to that point, I mean, I was doing good at MITRE. It was great. I did accomplish a lot. But at that point, I felt like re-inspired, re-motivated. I mean, before MITRE, I mean, I had like all these like promotions, like I had a checklist, I needed to buy a house, I needed to buy a car, like all these things. And then when I got to DC, I was naturally progressing, but there wasn't really a plan. And my plan, I had a checklist of things I wanted to do when I moved to DC, and I never achieved it. It was getting my MBA, it was buying a house, multiple things and so then I was like, what am I doing? I need to buy a house. I just had a baby. I need to get my MBA, and because if it's not, like, now is the time, she's a baby. And so yeah, I applied. I mean, she was born in April, I applied in October, and then I found a program that would support me during so I was going to school full time, single mom, and then going to school 2 nights out of the week, and it required a lot of help from people. I mean, I even had friends come over sometimes when I had to do presentations. My daughter's hair would sometimes be in the camera because she'd be like right next to me. And so it was a balancing act, but I just felt that it was important to get my degree. It's not something that my family, like, that's not really a thing. But for me, from moving to just the whole DC area, you meet everyone in DC that I feel like I run into has a master's or a PhD. And maybe it goes back to needing to certify what I know, but I just felt that it was important. But I loved my experience at American University. We did it online, and it made it easier that COVID happened in the middle of it. And so there was less distractions because we were all home anyway. So it was like, okay, I could
Got it.
read.
Got it. So you went to American University, got your MBA while you were there, while still working and being a single mom. And somehow you pulled all that stuff off. Tell me about what happens after graduation. And then at what point did you decide, I've been working at different consulting companies for a while. I've learned a lot. I've acquired skills, leadership skills, not just in consulting, but how to manage, how to like lead a team. And then at what point did you decide, you know what, I'm going to start my own thing?
So that list that I had was actually start a business here in the DC area. And I felt, so it really wasn't fully planned. The idea was there, but it wasn't fully planned. So something that I didn't mention about MITRE, at MITRE, I was the founder of the Multicultural Employee Resource Group and helped incubate the Black Cultural Network, the Asian Pacific Islander Network, as well as the Latin American Network, which I was really passionate about. But yeah, last year was a tough year. We lost one of the founders. It was just a shock. It was a shock to my entire system to lose one of my closest friends. And it really made me question, okay, so what am I doing with my life? Where am I? Where am I with my goals? And that was originally a goal of mine. And so through that, hard time, I came up and felt like, okay, I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I have the skill set that I need to be able to launch. And I took the leap. Honestly, I think that's the hardest part. Like looking back, because I've been wanting to do this for, like I said, it was just, I've started businesses before, but they were service industry. This is on a whole different scale. And it's a different way of doing business. And so I'm thankful I did. I'm glad, I'm no regrets, for taking the leap, but I do think that moment, like what happened last year, really like put me into action. And then I really had, I'm just more focused on living and determined to live according to like really what I want to do. Right. And so even the projects I want to work on, they're most, like I said, they're people focused. I want to create change as long as the change is for the better of people and helping organizations do better, be better, social impact. I'm like constantly working on volunteer type projects also and helping the community grow, giving out just different things.
Got it. Okay. So a few things there. So one, it's very unfortunate that, definitely the passing of someone or hardships like that, right, kind of act as a wake up call or as a call to action sometimes. I do like to say that things happen for a reason. And I tend to remind myself of that when things are not going my way. It's like, well, you can't abandon that thought when it doesn't suit your narrative. I hope that this has brought some light into your path and kind of steered you in the right direction. Two, would love to talk a little bit about what starting a ESG group, ESG?
ERG.
ERG. See, that's why we got to get the terms right. What is that, and what employee resource group? Yes, and then why? How do you start something like that within your organization? Like my organization has some, right? There are a bunch of organizations that I've been a part of that have them. How does one start those? And then the third point is really to just hear from you a little bit more about what these projects mean. Like if there's an organization out there that needs a consultant to come and help them do stuff, just an opportunity for you to just talk about how you can be helpful.
Thank you. Yes. So I'll tell you how I did it. If an organization is looking to do that, that's a different way, right? And so I talk about the bottom up and top down approach. And so we did the bottom up approach, and which means is we were employees and we wanted this group. It did not exist. And so I created a concept, which we came up with a name, Multicultural Employee Resource Group. We felt that it was important to start with multiculturalism first to be the most inclusive, since MITRE at the time did not have any cultural type affinity groups or nor programming of any sort. And so, and there was very limited Latinos, and so it was like, I can't go start a Black network. I'm a Latina. And so I was like, okay, we can't start a Latino network with just a handful of us. It'll be more impactful if we can join forces. We have some of similar struggles, and join forces and start this multicultural group. And we created a mission, a vision, and the entire concept of what we would be focusing on in terms of like social, community, like networking opportunities, professional development, community service. And we worked on so many things, and we formed a concept and then started socializing it to all of the employees and managers. So many people raised their hand to be a part of this group, and not just a part of it, but they were happy to take on any like leadership roles to move this forward. And so we quickly formed a leadership team of like, it was 14 people. I would host people at my house. I'd like be like, okay, come over on Thursday at 5. I'll have wine and we can order food or something, and let's hash out, let's create plans, and like, let's do this. And so we did it. And then we would start, we didn't have financial support from the organization, but we did approach our inclusion and diversity office at the time. And she said, run with it. She doesn't have funding for it, but fully endorsed us to move forward with it. And then she eventually got in a meeting with leadership, and then they approved it. And then over time, our programming got funding to be able to do more activities. A lot of our efforts for recruiting started getting more attention, to the point where there was no Latino focus, to like making it a goal of hiring 100 Latino interns. And so it's just, we were able to make a difference within the organization on multiple fronts, as well as creating a sense of belonging for employees who were there. And so you can start it that way. Or if there's like a company who wants this for their organization, that sense of belonging and, familia, and within their organization, obviously I know how to help create what those strategies look like. How do you engage your employees? How do you implement? And what type of programming does that look like? And, what are the benefits to be able to even present this to leadership? The business case, again, in terms of the value of diversity, which is critical to innovation and growth.
A few things. One, before you left your role, did you already have clients lined up, or how are you able to like find some of the clients that you work with?
So that's why everybody thinks I'm so brave, because I did not have any clients lined up, and I wasn't fully sure. I had a name, Meliora Advisors, but Meliora, which means for the pursuit of better. But I've had that name in my head for a while, but I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to focus on. And what's been critical to my success in finding clients has been networking. I mean, I feel like this whole past year, everybody sees me I went to every event for Hispanic Heritage Month. And also your like network of friends have been key in terms of not necessarily giving you like contracts, but really opening up the doors, right? Like opening up the opportunity, making sure like things like even providing an invitation or promo code to be at an event where there could be potential clients have been really critical. I just, it's still my first year. So all of those events cost money and travel and things like that. So even like just that little thing has been so helpful. So I appreciate so many of my friends that have supported me and made those connections, but networking has been key.
Got it. That's awesome. And because I know that, you couldn't stop at just starting your own firm. You also started another organization. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Includus Fund, which has been very, very exciting to launch. And so Includus, one word, is all about inclusion. So again, back to that focus of me working on things that will create programs or change the world for better for people, I just feel like there's different formats and different ways of actually doing that. So I want to create systemic change by helping support the government, helping large corporations create change within those organizations. But then how do we create change in terms of working with nonprofits or even people that just want to create change and don't know how? And so I feel like having that other vehicle to support and help create change, the nonprofit really has been key. I've been doing some fiscal sponsorship as well as internal projects, and I'm so excited because we are about to launch our a large project campaign that's called Canta Grita Vota. And that campaign is going to be focused on empowering Latinos to vote using music. And we've already secured artists that are going to be a part of this campaign. And I'm working with the Lanusa Latin Entertainment Network, and it's going to be huge. And I'm just excited. We're talking to partners right now and corporate partners and funders and just getting everybody on board to be able to launch in the new year and create really inspiring Latinos to vote and changing the narrative that our vote does count and we should not give up our power.
I love it. You're doing a lot. So just about two more questions for you. So one being, if someone is watching you and realizing that you can have so much impact in your fields, but they're wondering, can I make a living doing that? Can you give folks a range of how much money they can expect to make, given your years of experience when you were at a corporate company and then kind of that transition out? Like, how do you make sure that you maintain a standard of living that is still doing good and doing well?
So I think the engineering fields, automatically you get a better salary just because they pay more. Like this was a long time ago, but it was $55,000, which compared to the $7 I was making at the airline, the call center job, I mean, that was huge. And then going from there then to going to the government and moving to DC, I got bumped and was making six figures, and that was a goal, right? Like I could not imagine growing up where I grew up and it's I'm making six figures for working for I know it was MITRE, but it was technically, supporting the federal government working on these national projects. And then it just kept going. So then it was awesome to be able to keep getting raises. And then when you have more raises, you're able to invest and have homes and just to, have them, I know people this is for students, you can buy Mercedes and Audi. I've had those.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's lucrative to go into the engineering or tech field. Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. Are there any books, resources, or media that you have read or consumed that have helped you personally or professionally?
So I'm a book reader. I have tons in the back. So along the way, I've had different ones. I think it's called How to Win and Influence Friends by Dale Carnegie was a good one. And that one, so regardless of what your field you're in, you're always selling something, right? If it might be your idea, your solution, anything. And so that book really helped me be able to communicate my ideas more effectively, from the beginning when I started consulting, how to pitch solutions to people, which is really what I sell. I don't like selling just for selling. I like selling solutions, creating change. And the other one is Crucial Conversations, which is a book that provides a framework on how to have really crucial conversations and be able to communicate using facts and understands people's perspective and being able to walk away together with a solution and a better understanding of what the disagreement or whatever the conflict was. So that to me was very helpful. And then Strengths Finder. So when I got to MITRE, they really focus on strengths. And that's the first time I had ever heard, because I always felt like I needed to work on all my flaws. And instead, MITRE really focuses on focusing on your strengths. And Strengths Finder really helped me hone in on what I bring to the table and really focusing on those things. So I really recommend those three books.
That's amazing. Okay. Is there anything we have not covered that we should talk about or the world should know about Bacilia?
Yep. I think we covered a lot of my life in the past hour. But no, I'm also so I do speaking engagements as well. So from burritos to boardrooms.
I love it.
But that's my other job. But those are the three big things I'm doing right now.
I love it. I appreciate you taking the time to connect with us today, and look forward to staying in touch in the future.
Same here. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and believe on the mission we're on, please like, rate, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're using, and share this podcast with your friends in your networks. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Career Cheat Code, and tell us people or careers you would like to see highlighted. See you next week with some more cheat codes. Peace.